Vega followed this demonstration with a statement of restraint. He detailed 7 points during their operation, where human forces could have employed lethal measures with full justification. He described tactical advantages they held over GSA security teams. He explained how their technology could have permanently disabled the captured vessel's systems, rather than just controlling them. His testimony emphasized deliberate choice over capability. The Council recognized the combination as unprecedented in galactic history. No newly contacted species had ever demonstrated such advanced technology while exercising such operational restraint. Most civilizations progressed through predictable stages of technological development. Humanity had arrived with capabilities that defied categorization while maintaining ethical boundaries that exceeded established norms. Their decision would set precedent for all future first contact scenarios. Accepting humanity meant redefining the qualifications for interstellar recognition. It acknowledged that technological maturity could manifest differently across civilizations. The vote would determine whether traditional metrics remained relevant or needed fundamental revision. Traditional power dynamics faced immediate disruption. Species that had dominated technological development for millennia now encountered equals from unexpected origins. Civilizations that controlled information flow through gradual release protocols confronted a culture demanding immediate access. The established order of interstellar relations stood at a critical inflection point. The voting process commenced with ceremonial gravity. Each representative activated their recognition console in turn. Green approval signals appeared across the display board in steady progression. The Vorlak delegate hesitated, his hand hovering over the control panel. He examined the evidence files one final time, particularly the sections detailing human restraint during the ship takeover. His console glowed green after 17 seconds of consideration. The Trillian representative followed suit after consulting with her advisory team. Their brief discussion focused on the molecular technology demonstration and its peaceful application. The console activated green without further delay. The final votes registered in rapid succession, completing the unanimous approval requirement. High Counselor Zebru announced the result with formal precision. Earth receives full recognition as a spacefaring civilization with all associated rights and responsibilities. The statement granted humanity immediate embassy status, trade rights, and participation in galactic governance. It marked the first time a species achieved full standing without undergoing the traditional centuries-long integration process. Galactic medical technology could repair neural damage from the experimentation. Their science had advanced beyond cellular regeneration into full neurological restoration. The techniques could rebuild fractured synapse patterns and restore damaged cognitive functions. Earth's own medical capabilities remained decades behind these advancements. The human subjects needed access to technology they couldn't possibly develop independently. Some council members resisted sharing their advanced medical science. The Vorlak delegation argued technology transfer violated interstellar protection protocols. They cited historical cases where premature technology sharing caused cultural disruption. The Trillians supported this position, emphasizing the need for gradual integration. Their concerns centered on maintaining technological advantages and control over advanced knowledge distribution. Commander Parker reframed the discussion entirely. He presented the medical transfer not as reparations but as knowledge exchange. His argument shifted the context from punishment to mutual benefit. He emphasized collaboration over concession, partnership over penalty. The language changed how council members perceived the arrangement. Humans offered their adaptive technology principles in return. They proposed sharing the molecular interaction science that had neutralized GSA systems. This technology represented a breakthrough the galactic community had considered theoretically impossible. Their offer demonstrated willingness to contribute valuable knowledge rather than simply receive advanced medicine. The arrangement created balanced exchange instead of one-sided reparations. Both civilizations would gain capabilities previously outside their reach. Humans received medical restoration technology. Galactic species gained access to adaptive quantum science. The framework established reciprocity rather than dominance. The agreement expanded to include cultural and scientific exchange programs. These programs allowed shared research initiatives and educational opportunities. Scientists from both civilizations would work on joint projects. Students would study across cultural boundaries. The exchanges built understanding beyond technological transfer. All abducted civilians received guarantees of lifetime medical monitoring. The commitment ensured ongoing care for any late-onset effects from experimentation. Medical teams would track their health indefinitely using advanced galactic diagnostics. The monitoring provided security against future complications from their ordeal. Implementation required careful planning and verification. Medical teams needed to coordinate between galactic and human medical practices. Technology transfer required secure protocols to prevent misuse. Exchange programs demanded cultural sensitivity training and logistical support. The details involved complex interstellar coordination. The Council established oversight committees with mixed species representation. These groups would monitor implementation and address concerns. They included medical experts, cultural specialists, and technology administrators. Their role ensured fair execution of all agreement terms. Funding became the final point of negotiation. The costs involved massive medical operations and technology infrastructure. Traditional interstellar law placed financial responsibility on the offending party. The GSA's endowment contained sufficient resources to cover all expenses. The resolution allocated GSA funds for complete rehabilitation. Their financial reserves would pay for medical treatments, technology transfer, and exchange programs. The funding came from the organization's own resources rather than council taxes or member contributions. This placed the economic burden directly on the responsible party. The implementation timeline began immediately after funding approval. Medical teams started preparing for patient transfers. Technology experts initiated knowledge exchange protocols. Cultural committees developed exchange program frameworks. The process moved with deliberate speed despite its complexity. Galactic medical ships received clearance to approach Earth space. Their advanced facilities could handle the most complex neurological repairs. Human medical personnel began training on the new technologies. The collaboration represented unprecedented cooperation between the civilizations. The reparations framework transformed conflict into cooperation. What began as punishment became partnership. The agreement created foundations for lasting relations beyond the immediate crisis. Both civilizations emerged with enhanced capabilities and deeper understanding. Commander Vega offered Tessar a position in the emerging human diplomatic corps. The invitation came during their final debriefing before the human team's departure from Verisix Station. Vega presented the offer with the same directness he used for tactical assessments. The position leveraged Tessar's extensive knowledge of galactic law and bureaucratic structures. His expertise covered thousands of years of interstellar agreements and council procedures. This institutional knowledge would prove invaluable for humanity's integration into galactic society. Acceptance meant abandoning his career and species affiliations. Tessar's testimony had already terminated his GSA position. Returning to his homeworld would involve lengthy security reviews and probable exile. His actions had placed him outside traditional galactic career paths. The human offer represented both opportunity and permanent separation from his previous life. Vega emphasized the critical need for bridge figures between civilizations. Humanity required advisors who understood galactic institutions from within. They needed voices that could translate human approaches into frameworks the Council would accept. Tessar's ethical stance during the crisis demonstrated his value as such an intermediary. His willingness to testify against his own organization showed moral consistency. Tessar's perspective represented progressive galactic voices often marginalized in GSA operations. His species valued ethical conduct above scientific advancement, making him naturally aligned with human principles. His appointment would signal a new collaborative paradigm between civilizations. It would demonstrate that interstellar relations could transcend traditional species boundaries. The position carried ambassadorial rank with full council access. It included authority to negotiate on humanity's behalf in diplomatic matters. The role offered influence exceeding his previous junior researcher status. He would help shape the foundational agreements between Earth and the galactic community. His insights could prevent misunderstandings during humanity's integration process. He would become the first non-human in Earth's diplomatic service. The appointment broke with centuries of human tradition about representation. It demonstrated their commitment to inclusive interstellar relations. Tessar's presence would symbolize the new era of cooperation they hoped to establish. The decision carried personal and professional consequences. Accepting meant permanent relocation to human territories. It involved adapting to unfamiliar cultural norms and physical environments. His family would face scrutiny and possible isolation within their own society. The choice represented a complete restructuring of his life and identity. Tessar considered the alternative paths available. Returning to his species meant facing disciplinary proceedings and limited career options. Seeking asylum with another civilization offered temporary safety, but no meaningful purpose. The human offer provided both sanctuary and significant responsibility. It aligned with his ethical beliefs while utilizing his specialized knowledge. He negotiated conditions protecting his species' interests before accepting. The terms guaranteed his people would receive early access to human adaptive technology. They ensured his homeworld's representation in future diplomatic exchanges. The agreement included cultural safeguards to prevent misinterpretation of his actions. These provisions demonstrated his continued loyalty to his origins despite his new allegiance. His formal acceptance occurred during a brief ceremony aboard the human vessel. Vega presented him with diplomatic credentials bearing Earth's insignia. The documents granted him immediate authority to represent human interests. His first assignment involved coordinating the medical transfer operations for injured civilians. Tessar's transition began with intensive briefings on human culture and governance. He studied their history, social structures, and diplomatic priorities. Human specialists trained him on their communication styles and negotiation approaches. The preparation ensured he could effectively represent their interests while maintaining his galactic perspective. His appointment marked a fundamental shift in interstellar diplomacy. For the first time, a species included external representatives in its official service. The move demonstrated humanity's unique approach to galactic integration. They valued capability and ethical alignment over traditional species boundaries. Tessar's role would test whether such cross-cultural representation could function effectively. The human diplomatic corps gained an advisor with insider knowledge of galactic institutions. Tessar understood council procedures, bureaucratic channels, and political alliances. His insights would help humanity navigate the complex interstellar landscape. His presence ensured their actions would align with established protocols while introducing new approaches. His first official act involved drafting the framework for technology exchange programs. He used his galactic legal expertise to create agreements acceptable to both sides. The documents balanced human innovation with traditional interstellar safeguards. His work demonstrated the practical value of his unique position, bridging both civilizations. Human tactical superiority was absolute throughout the operation. Their technology could have dismantled the GSA vessel at the molecular level. They controlled every critical system from engines to life support. Security teams were neutralized without resistance. Military protocols justified lethal engagement on 7 separate occasions. Standard rules of engagement authorized deadly force during ship takeover scenarios. Their equipment could have permanently disabled the warship systems. Commander Vega refused every lethal option. He ordered neural disruption instead of energy weapons. He chose system control over system destruction. His teams bypassed security without causing physical harm. They left GSA personnel conscious but unable to resist. Vega accepted personal risk to maintain non-lethal operations. His teams operated without protective gear in hostile territory. They relied on precision rather than overwhelming force. This restraint became their most effective strategic weapon. The Council observed the complete disparity between capability and action. They noted humans could have destroyed the vessel, but chose control instead. Security footage showed human teams avoiding unnecessary force. Medical scans confirmed no permanent injuries among GSA personnel. The evidence demonstrated deliberate ethical choices under combat conditions. GSA intelligence reports had described humans as inherently aggressive. Their files predicted violent responses to confinement or threat. The reality contradicted every assessment. Humans displayed operational patience instead of instinctive aggression. They used technology to de-escalate rather than dominate. Their actions showed calculated restraint rather than emotional reaction. The operation established new precedent for ethical first contact. It demonstrated that advanced capability didn't require lethal demonstration. The Council recognized the strategic value of measured response. Their analysis concluded humans had turned restraint into tactical advantage. The GSA's own aggression became their strategic liability. Long-term impact reshaped galactic perceptions fundamentally. Civilizations that viewed new species as threats now saw potential partners. The demonstration of controlled power changed diplomatic calculations. Human technology became interesting rather than frightening. Their ethical framework became respectable rather than primitive. Military analysts studied the operation for its strategic innovation. They noted how non-lethal tactics created diplomatic opportunities. The mission achieved all objectives without creating permanent enemies. GSA personnel became witnesses rather than casualties. Their testimony supported human claims during council proceedings. The council's final assessment highlighted the restraint strategy. Their report emphasized how controlled response built trust faster than demonstrations of power. Human actions proved more convincing than any diplomatic statement. Their behavior during crisis demonstrated their peacetime intentions more clearly than promises could. Galactic media coverage shifted from fear to curiosity. Outlets that had prepared alarmist stories about human aggression instead reported on their surgical precision. The narrative changed from potential threat to valuable partner. Public perception aligned with the tactical reality demonstrated during the operation. Humanity's approach created lasting diplomatic advantages. Their restraint during the crisis became their strongest recommendation for integration. The Council's unanimous recognition reflected this strategic reality. They had proven themselves capable and controlled, dangerous only to those who threatened their people. This combination made them ideal candidates for interstellar partnership. The galaxy began viewing humans as potential allies rather than potential problems. Parker responded with galactic ethical codes displayed side by side with experiment logs. He showed specific violations of 17 interstellar agreements the GSA had helped create. Each experiment type corresponded to clear prohibitions against non-consenting sentient research. The documentation proved the organization knowingly operated outside established boundaries. The evidence showed researchers acknowledging ethical concerns in internal memos while proceeding with experiments. The chamber atmosphere shifted from diplomatic formality to grim assessment. Representatives examined the evidence with professional detachment, giving way to moral concern. The scale of violations became impossible to ignore when presented across multiple species and time periods. This wasn't about one incident, but about institutional corruption of scientific principles. Tessar entered the chamber under Council security escort. His Kel features showed strain but determination. He took the testimony platform beside Parker, facing the assembled representatives without flinching. His voice carried the formal cadence of his species when speaking truth under oath. He confirmed the GSA leadership knowingly violated ethical boundaries. He detailed internal discussions where senior researchers dismissed concerns about subject welfare. He described pressure to classify permanent harm as acceptable data collection. His testimony removed any doubt about deliberate wrongdoing. The chamber fell into complete silence. 47 species representatives processed the confirmation from within the GSA's own ranks. The institutional defense collapsed under the weight of insider testimony. Director Kazold stood isolated at his platform, his arguments rendered meaningless by the assistant's quiet words. Vega stepped to the center of the council chamber. His presence commanded attention without theatricality. He spoke in clear galactic standard, his voice carrying to every representative station. Humanity seeks formal recognition as a spacefaring civilization. We present 4 requirements for continued peaceful relations. The statement landed with deliberate weight, each word measured and precise. The first demand addressed the immediate harm: full medical rehabilitation for all abducted civilians using galactic medical technology. The requirement specified complete neural repair for those subjected to experimentation. It included psychological restoration and lifetime medical monitoring. The scope covered not just physical damage but complete functional recovery. The humans had documented every injury and now demanded corresponding repair. The second condition involved knowledge access. Complete access to galactic scientific and historical databases. This meant unrestricted entry to 15,000 years of technological advancement and cultural records. The demand challenged the standard gradual release protocols for new species. Humans wanted immediate parity and information access, bypassing the usual centuries-long integration process. The third term targeted accountability. Suspension of all GSA personnel involved in unethical practices pending investigation. This included researchers, security teams, and command staff who authorized or conducted prohibited experiments. The requirements specified temporary removal from positions of authority during thorough review. It ensured those responsible would face consequences before any discussion of forgiveness. The final condition established future relations. Formal diplomatic recognition and establishment of full diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. This meant embassy rights, trade negotiations, and participation in interstellar governance. Humanity sought not just acceptance but equal standing among spacefaring civilizations. The demands challenged established power structures fundamentally. They positioned a newly contacted species as equals rather than subordinates. Traditional protocols required centuries of observation and gradual integration before granting such status. Humanity's approach bypassed all standard procedures for first contact scenarios. Several council members expressed immediate resistance. The Vorlak representative questioned technological readiness. The Trallian delegate argued cultural integration should precede full recognition. Multiple species voiced concerns about setting dangerous precedents for future contacts. They viewed the demands as excessive for a civilization with no previous interstellar experience. Vega responded to each objection with calm precision. He acknowledged their concerns while reinforcing the legitimacy of human claims. His arguments centered on demonstrated capability rather than traditional qualifications. He pointed to their non-lethal takeover of advanced GSA systems. He highlighted their restraint during operations that justified lethal response. He emphasized their technological sophistication in neutralizing galactic engineering. The council chamber divided into clear factions. Progressive species supported immediate recognition based on demonstrated maturity. Traditionalists insisted on following established protocols. Neutral members sought compromise positions that might satisfy both sides. The debate reflected deeper tensions about galactic governance and power distribution. Humanity's position remained unwavering. They presented their demands as non-negotiable prerequisites for peaceful relations. This wasn't a request for consideration but a statement of necessary conditions. Their calm certainty carried more weight than aggressive posturing would have achieved. The deliberation process extended through multiple voting cycles. Procedural challenges and traditional objections slowed progress. Behind the scenes, council members reviewed the evidence package repeatedly. They assessed the implications of accepting humanity's terms versus rejecting them. Progressive factions gradually gained support as more representatives examined the full scope of GSA violations. The systematic nature of the ethical breaches made traditional resistance seem complicit. The evidence showed patterns that demanded extraordinary response measures. After extensive discussion, the council reached consensus through careful negotiation. They acknowledged the legitimacy of human demands while establishing implementation frameworks. The resolution recognized the unique circumstances justifying deviation from standard protocols. High Counselor Zebru announced the decision with formal gravity. The Galactic Council acknowledges the validity of humanity's requirements for continued relations. The statement included specific acceptance of all 4 conditions with detailed implementation timelines. Medical teams would deploy immediately. Database access would begin within standard cycles. GSA personnel suspensions would take effect pending investigation. Diplomatic recognition would proceed through accelerated channels. The resolution represented a fundamental shift in interstellar relations. A newly contacted species had negotiated from a position of strength and achieved full recognition. The Council's acceptance validated humanity's unique approach to first contact scenarios. Galactic law demanded unanimous consent for new species recognition. The requirement ensured no single civilization could force acceptance of an unprepared culture into interstellar society. Every council member held veto power over humanity's petition. The chamber prepared for extensive debate over technological and cultural readiness standards. The Vorlak representative initiated the challenge. His species valued technological achievement above all other qualifications. He questioned humanity's infrastructure development and energy management systems. His argument centered on their apparent lack of spacefaring history beyond their recent emergence. The Trallian delegate supported this position, emphasizing traditional progression timelines for new space civilizations. Both species insisted on demonstration of technological maturity before granting recognition. Commander Parker responded with a simple metal cylinder from his uniform pocket. The device appeared unremarkable, resembling standard writing instruments. He activated it without dramatic gesture. The council chamber's primary display systems flickered simultaneously. Every screen in the room shifted to show the same diagnostic readout. The device wasn't transmitting signals or emitting energy. It simply caused technology to respond to its presence. The demonstration showed molecular disruption technology operating at its most refined level. Parker's device didn't damage systems or override controls. It convinced the chamber's advanced systems to display precisely what he wanted them to show. The Council's own security scanners registered no hostile action or energy signature. The technology worked through principles the galactic community considered theoretical impossibilities. His testimony before the Galactic Council could dismantle the entire research division. He possessed first-hand knowledge of protocol deviations and ethical breaches. He could confirm the deliberate nature of the violations, not just their existence. His evidence would show systematic corruption rather than isolated incidents. Vega presented the consequences with clinical clarity. Testifying meant permanent exile from GSA territories. It meant his species might face political repercussions for his actions. His family would undergo security investigations. His name would become associated with betrayal across multiple civilizations. The human commander made no attempt to minimize the personal cost. Tassar considered the alternative. Remaining silent meant condoning practices that violated his fundamental beliefs. It meant allowing further operations against a species that had demonstrated both capability and restraint. He'd watched humans neutralize an entire ship without taking a single life. They'd achieved through precision what others would have accomplished through destruction. He looked at the evidence compilation showing civilian abductions and neurological damage. The files contained medical reports on subjects who would never recover normal function. He thought about the planned expansion of these operations. The decision became clear through simple moral arithmetic. The Cal assistant stood from his chair and faced Vega directly. His posture showed no hesitation despite the consequences. I will provide full testimony before the council. My people's traditions demand witness against this violation. His voice carried the formal cadence of his species' oath rituals. Vega nodded once, a gesture of professional recognition between soldiers. Your testimony begins in 4 hours. Prepare your evidence. The human commander turned and left the room, giving Tassar privacy to confront the magnitude of his decision. The assistant began organizing his notes. Knowing he was about to dismantle his own career to protect strangers from suffering he'd witnessed firsthand. Verisix Station maintained absolute neutrality under interstellar law. Its massive docking arms extended from a central core that hosted the Galactic Council's most sensitive diplomatic proceedings. The station's security forces answered only to the Council itself, not to any member species. Their jurisdiction represented the closest thing to impartial authority in the galaxy. The station control registered the approaching GSA vessel's request for arbitration proceedings. Standard protocol required them to grant docking rights for any ship seeking Council mediation. 3 GSA warships moved to intercept before the vessel reached safe approach distance. Their weapon systems activated targeting locks but held fire outside Verisix's defensive perimeter. The lead interceptor demanded immediate surrender and return to GSA jurisdiction. Their transmission carried the authority of High Command, citing emergency security protocols. The warships positioned themselves in classic interdiction formation, ready to disable engines and board the vessel. The captured ship maintained its approach vector without deviation. Its speed held constant at exactly the regulated docking velocity. Defensive systems remained offline. Weapons ports showed no energy signatures. The human controllers made no attempt to evade or communicate with the interceptors. Their course continued straight toward Verisix's designated arbitration docking arm. The lack of defensive posturing confused the warship commanders. They expected evasion attempts or countermeasures, not this calm progression. A data burst transmitted from the ship toward Verisix control. The transmission used Council emergency channels with proper authentication codes. It contained the complete evidence package detailing GSA experimentation practices. The data stream copied itself to 12 Council member representatives simultaneously, Security protocols verified the transmission's origin and content integrity. Council members began accessing the files within moments of receipt. GSA Command issued direct orders to seize the vessel by any means necessary. Their transmission prioritized mission success over diplomatic consequences. The warships received authorization to breach Verisix's perimeter if required. Their weapons systems charged to engagement levels. Targeting solutions locked onto the ship's engine compartment and command deck. The lead interceptor began moving to block the docking approach path. Verisix security forces deployed from station defense bays. Their ships positioned between the GSA warships and the incoming vessel. Station control overrode GSA command authority within their jurisdictional space. The security commander informed the warships that firing within neutral territory would constitute an act of aggression against the Council itself. Their weapons tracked the GSA ships with equal precision. The Council representatives reviewed the evidence package during the standoff. Multiple species delegates registered formal protests against GSA actions. Emergency sessions convened to address the violations shown in the transmission. Council security received authorization to protect the arriving vessel under interstellar mediation statutes. Their orders carried more weight than GSA military commands. The GSA warships broke off their interception under Council pressure. They maintained position just outside Verisix's jurisdiction, but could not enter without triggering full diplomatic incidents. Their weapons remained active but aimed away from the station. The captured ship completed its final approach unchallenged. Docking clamps engaged with smooth precision. The ship settled into its berth as station security teams formed protective perimeters. Airlight connections established with proper quarantine protocols. The vessel now existed under Council protection until arbitration concluded. Any attempt to board or seize it would violate interstellar law. Vega and Parker emerged through the airlock without weapons or armor. They wore simple duty uniforms without rank insignia. Their hands remained visible at their sides. Station security scanned them for weapons and found none. Their calm demeanor contrasted with the tension surrounding the docking procedure. They followed security escorts toward the Council chamber entrance, their movements economical and relaxed. The doors to the main arbitration hall slid open as they approached. High Counselor Zebru presided over the Council chamber from his elevated podium. 47 species representatives occupied their designated stations, their varied physiologies creating a mosaic of interstellar diplomacy. The air carried the subtle hum of active translation systems and environmental controls, maintaining multiple atmospheric requirements. Director Kazult stood at the defense platform, his posture radiating institutional confidence. He began his testimony with polished precision, framing the GSA's actions as necessary first contact procedures. He described human capture as standard biological survey work, emphasizing the scientific value of studying a new species. His language carefully avoided any terms that might suggest ethical concerns. Commander Parker took the presentation platform without ceremony. He activated the evidence display with a simple gesture. The main holographic projector showed clean surgical theaters and restrained human subjects. The footage displayed medical procedures performed without anesthetic. Researchers worked on conscious individuals, noting physiological responses to invasive interventions. The chamber watched neural implants being inserted while subjects displayed visible distress. The videos showed detailed measurements of pain responses and stress indicators. Director Kazult interrupted with a dismissive wave. He classified the procedures as essential biological compatibility testing. He claimed they needed real-time data on human physiological responses to advanced medical technology. His argument suggested these measures were unfortunate, but necessary for establishing safe interaction protocols. He positioned the GSA as responsible scientists making difficult choices for greater knowledge. Parker let the footage continue. The next sequence showed psychological testing logs. Subjects endured extended sensory deprivation in isolation chambers. Others faced simulated threat scenarios through neural manipulation. Researchers documented cognitive breakdown patterns and memory fragmentation. The files contained notes on optimal stress induction techniques for data collection. Parker highlighted the systematic nature of the experiments. He showed identical testing methodologies applied across multiple species over centuries. The pattern demonstrated institutional practice rather than isolated incidents. Multiple council members began withdrawing support visibly. The teller representative shut down his console interface. The VRIX delegation conferred in hushed tones before signaling their formal objection. Species that had previously supported GSA operations now showed clear discomfort. The evidence presented a picture of systematic ethical violation that crossed cultural boundaries. Director Kazult attempted damage control. He emphasized the scientific advancements gained through these methods. He cited medical breakthroughs and biological discoveries that benefited multiple civilizations. His argument centered on the balance between ethical concerns and practical progress. He suggested that difficult choices were necessary for galactic advancement. Captain Parker's voice came over the bridge speakers with calm authority. "This is Commander Parker. Bridge security is now under our control. Please remain at your stations and make no aggressive movements." The voice wasn't coming from the comm system. It emanated from the ship's internal address network, a system that shouldn't have been accessible without bridge authorization. GSA bridge crew looked toward the command chair. 4 human operatives had entered through maintenance access points that didn't appear on any deck plans. They wore simple black uniforms without visible rank insignia. They carried compact devices that looked like modified industrial tools. None pointed weapons at the crew. They simply took positions at strategic points around the bridge, their eyes scanning the crew with professional assessment. The bridge officers made no move to resist. Their tactical displays showed the entire security complement neutralized. Their weapon systems were locked out. Their communications were controlled. They sat at their stations under the calm observation of the human team, understanding that resistance was both pointless and unnecessary. Navigation completed the course change. The main engines engaged at precisely 30% power, turning the massive vessel toward a new heading. The star charts identified the destination as neutral space, specifically the Verisix sector, where interstellar disputes underwent arbitration. The ship moved with smooth precision, its course alteration appearing perfectly legitimate in every external reading. The transition was so seamless that nearby monitoring stations wouldn't register anything unusual. To any external observer, the GSA vessel was simply executing a scheduled course change. Only the crew on the bridge understood they were now passengers on their own ship, heading toward a destination they hadn't chosen, under the control of a species they'd severely underestimated. Commander Parker accessed the main research database through a direct hardware interface. The system's security protocols didn't register his presence as an intrusion. His equipment treated the data core like a simple storage device, bypassing authentication entirely. He sorted through thousands of files labeled as standard observation records and biological surveys. The initial entries appeared consistent with scientific study. Then he found the unredacted logs. Video records showed civilian abductions from remote settlements. The footage displayed peaceful environments, farming outposts, small transport vessels, isolated research stations. GSA teams used advanced cloaking technology to approach undetected. Their methods involved precise energy manipulation that rendered subjects unconscious without physical contact. The recordings showed them extracting individuals from their daily lives with clinical efficiency. Family members continued their activities unaware that a person had just vanished beside them. Medical logs detailed surgical procedures performed on conscious subjects. The documents described neural interface implantation without anesthesia. Researchers noted physiological stress responses but classified them as acceptable data points. They recorded brain activity patterns during extreme duress, documenting how different species reacted to invasive experimentation. The files contained detailed measurements of pain threshold and psychological breakdown points. Psychological testing logs revealed systematic trauma induction. Tests involved sensory deprivation lasting standard weeks. Others used controlled fear stimulation through neural manipulation. Researchers recorded cognitive deterioration rates and memory fragmentation patterns. They exposed subjects to simulated existential threats while monitoring adrenal and neural responses. The logs classified these as standard stress tolerance evaluations. Genetic manipulation experiments showed deliberate alteration of non-consenting subjects. Researchers modified cellular structures to test regeneration limits. They introduced foreign DNA sequences to observe rejection phenomena. Some experiments involved forced evolutionary acceleration through targeted mutation induction. The files noted permanent physiological changes in 78% of test subjects. Researchers had classified all these actions under standard observation protocols. Their documentation used neutral scientific terminology that obscured the nature of the experiments. Pain became neural excitation response. Trauma induction was labeled environmental adaptation testing. Surgical procedures were recorded as biological sampling and implantation studies. The language created a buffer between action and consequence. Medical files indicated permanent damage to at least 4 human subjects. One suffered complete neural pathway degradation from repeated interface experiments. Another developed irreversible genetic instability from forced mutation tests. 2 others showed psychological fragmentation from extended isolation protocols. The files noted these outcomes as valuable data points for species limitation mapping. The GSA had maintained these practices across 37 species over several centuries. Their research database contained similar files for multiple civilizations at various contact stages. The pattern showed systematic violation of biological rights under the guise of scientific advancement. Each species file contained records of unauthorized experimentation and permanent harm. Parker's team compiled the evidence with methodical precision. They organized video logs by species and experiment type. They cross-referenced medical files with researcher annotations. They created time-stamped sequences showing the progression from abduction to permanent injury. The compilation showed not isolated incidents but institutional practice. The final dossier contained irrefutable evidence of interstellar war crimes. It documented unauthorized biological experimentation on sentient species. It showed deliberate harm under false pretenses. It proved systematic violation of galactic ethical codes that the GSA itself had helped establish. The evidence was clean, organized, and ready for presentation. Vega separated Tazar from the other researchers during the systematic detainment process. The human commander conducted his own assessment of the science team, using different criteria than standard security screening. He wasn't looking for threats or seniority. He was identifying psychological profiles and ethical boundaries. Tessar's personnel file showed multiple official reprimands for questioning experimental protocols. His performance reviews noted excessive concern for subject welfare. Vega directed him to a separate observation room away from the main holding area. The space contained only 2 chairs and a terminal. Tessar expected interrogation tactics or intimidation methods. Instead, Vega simply sat across from him and stated facts. Your database access codes will provide the restricted files. Your cooperation is noted but not required. The statement carried no threat, only certainty. Tessar accessed the terminal without argument. His fingers moved across the interface with practiced efficiency. He bypassed the standard security layers using his research authorization, then input his personal override codes. The system opened deeper data tiers that contained the real experimentation records. He didn't hesitate or attempt to conceal his actions. His movements were deliberate and resigned. His species, the Kel, maintained strict ethical codes developed over millennia of philosophical tradition. They valued moral conduct above technological advancement or scientific discovery. Tessar had joined the GSA believing their stated principles aligned with his own culture's values. He'd slowly realized the organization operated on completely different priorities. He revealed the GSA's planned expansion of human acquisition operations. The initial capture represented only Phase 1. Phase 2 involved coordinated abductions across 12 Earth regions, targeting specific genetic markers. Phase 3 planned establishment of permanent observation facilities within human population centers. The timelines showed operations beginning within 3 standard cycles. His actions constituted high treason under Galactic Concord statutes. Providing restricted access to an opposing force carried permanent exile penalties. Aiding in the compilation of evidence against his own organization meant complete professional termination. His career, reputation, and freedom were now forfeit under interstellar law. Tessar believed the GSA had violated its original founding principles beyond reconciliation. The organization established to foster peaceful contact and shared knowledge had become an instrument of unauthorized experimentation. He'd watched senior researchers justify increasingly extreme measures under the banner of scientific necessity. The line between observation and violation had disappeared entirely. Human countermeasures didn't fight technology with technology. They used adaptive quantum interference that operated at the molecular level. It wasn't about overpowering systems, but convincing them to stop functioning. The human approach treated technology as something to be negotiated with rather than dominated. Vega watched the field's deterioration with clinical interest. He spoke without looking at the observation window, his voice calm and instructive. Your technology relies on fixed states. Ours prefers conversation. We're not breaking your field. We're persuading its constituent molecules to reconsider their alignment. The lead scientist stared at his readouts, unable to process what he was seeing. This wasn't a weapon or tool in any conventional sense. It was a fundamental reimagining of how matter and energy could interact. The GSA's entire understanding of physics had just been rendered incomplete. The field's visual signature faded from brilliant blue to translucent gold, then to a faint silver shimmer. The containment warning signal shifted from red alert to complete system offline status. The barrier hadn't been breached or destroyed. It had been neutralized into harmless background energy. Vega took a step forward. His boot made contact with where the field should have been solid. There was no resistance, no energy discharge, no defensive reaction. The system logs would later show the field maintained perfect structural integrity, according to every diagnostic measurement. Yet it offered no barrier to his passage. He moved through the space where an impenetrable wall had existed moments before. The transition was seamless, without visual distortion or energy discharge. His body crossed the threshold that should have been physically impossible to cross. The containment chamber was now an open room. The researchers watched in stunned silence as Vega walked toward the reinforced door, separating him from the rest of the facility. His movement was deliberate but unhurried, the same economical motion he'd used rising from the examination table. He had turned their most secure area into accessible space with nothing more than patience and invisible science. Security protocols activated automatically. Magnetic locks engaged on all exit points. Emergency barriers descended from ceiling slots. The system responded exactly as designed to a containment breach. But the foundation of that design had just been proven fundamentally flawed. GSA Security Command interpreted the lab containment failure as a standard systems malfunction. Their diagnostic protocols assumed internal technical errors, not external interference. The possibility of an active breach scenario never reached their threat assessment matrix. They dispatched 6 standard containment teams to the laboratory sector under routine procedures, expecting to find malfunctioning equipment and a confused research staff. The security teams moved through the ship's corridors with practiced efficiency. They wore standard tactical armor and carried non-lethal suppression gear designed for internal threats. Their training focused on containing escaped specimens or subduing unruly crew members. None of their preparation accounted for what they were about to encounter. Communications remained clear until they reached the outer laboratory access junctions. Then the security feeds began showing anomalies. Camera views from 3 separate deck junctions showed human figures moving with coordinated precision. These weren't researchers in lab coats. They wore simple dark clothing with minimal visible equipment. Their movements were economical and purposeful, sweeping through corridors without weapons drawn. The security teams watching the feeds noted the absence of energy signatures or projectile weapons. The humans appeared to be operating empty-handed. The first team made contact at Junction 7B. Their commander issued standard containment orders through his helmet speaker. The human operative didn't respond verbally or raise any defensive posture. He simply made a subtle hand gesture toward his own team, then pointed 2 fingers at the security squad. The GSA team's tactical systems immediately registered massive signal interference. Their helmet displays flickered and died. Comms turned to static. Their armor's servo-assist systems disengaged, leaving them trapped inside suddenly heavy plating. The second team encountered a different approach. A human female stood calmly in the center of a cross corridor as they approached. She raised what appeared to be a simple metal cylinder about the size of a writing instrument. There was no energy discharge, no visible beam or projectile. The entire security team simultaneously experienced neural feedback that overloaded their motor control. They collapsed to the deck, fully conscious but unable to coordinate muscle movement. Their weapons remained untouched in their hands. Communication across multiple decks began failing systematically. Not jamming or interference, complete signal loss. Channels that had been active moments before went dead without warning. The bridge received no distress calls, no combat alerts, no damage reports. Their status board showed only a spreading pattern of system offline alerts moving through the ship's internal network. It was like watching sections of the vessel simply stop existing in their operational awareness. The human equipment defied analysis. Security teams that managed brief visual contact reported devices that looked improvised or primitive. Some appeared to be modified tools. Others resembled simple consumer electronics. None matched any known weapon or tactical system in galactic databases. Their effects, however, were precise and devastating. They didn't destroy systems or injure personnel. They simply made technology stop working and people stop moving. The 6th containment team attempted to retreat and regroup when they realized the pattern. They backed into a maintenance corridor, sealing the blast doors behind them. Their commander tried to report the tactical situation to Security Command. His transmission died halfway through his sentence. The blast doors they'd just sealed hissed open without command input. A single human stood in the doorway holding what looked like a data tablet with exposed circuitry. The team's weapons dropped from suddenly numb fingers. Their armor locks engaged automatically, freezing them in place like statues. 6 elite security teams, trained and equipped for internal threats, had been neutralized without a single shot fired. Not just defeated, rendered completely non-functional through methods that bypassed all their defensive measures. The humans hadn't fought them. They'd simply turned off their capability to operate. GSA engine control required 7 separate authentication layers, each with rotating encryption keys and biometric verification. The system was designed to prevent exactly what was happening. Engineering reported unauthorized access attempts across multiple subsystems, but the alerts weren't triggering security protocols. The attempts didn't appear as brute force attacks or code breaches. They registered as legitimate command inputs from authorized users. The main propulsion system accepted new navigation commands without resistance. The engineering crew watched their control interfaces execute course alterations they hadn't authorized. They tried to override the commands, but found their access permissions had been downgraded to observation status only. Their attempts to lock out the navigation systems resulted in error messages stating the systems were already under authorized command. The humans hadn't broken the encryption. They made it irrelevant. Their technology bypassed software entirely, interfacing directly with system hardware at the molecular level. It didn't matter how many authentication layers protected the command pathways when the humans were speaking directly to the circuitry executing those commands. The GSA's entire security model assumed attackers would play by the rules of their system architecture. Life support control shifted next. Environmental systems adjusted oxygen levels and temperature gradients throughout the ship. The changes were subtle but precise, creating optimal conditions for human physiology while maintaining habitability for other species. The adjustments happened without any commands appearing in the system logs. Weapons control went offline completely. The tactical stations registered all defensive systems as operational, but non-responsive to GSA command input. Targeting systems, shield generators, and point defense networks remained active, but refused commands from the bridge crew. The weapons officers could only watch as their control interfaces displayed a simple status message. Under new management, communications suffered the same fate. External transmissions required approval from a system that now answered to different authorities. Internal comms remained operational but monitored. The humans weren't jamming signals. They were simply reading every transmission while controlling outbound traffic. The Galactic Scientific Authority captured what they thought was a standard human specimen. They were wrong. Commander Jack Vega wakes in their lab and delivers a chilling warning. You grabbed the wrong human. His team is already neutralizing their tech at the molecular level. This isn't an abduction. It's a rescue mission turned strategic takeover. How will one species force the galaxy to rewrite its rules? 4 attempts to secure a human specimen ended in total failure. Each resulted in catastrophic system overloads, structural damage, and in one case, the complete loss of a GSA outpost. They were determined to succeed on the 5th attempt. Their target appeared unremarkable. Standard human physiology, mid-level physical conditioning, and no detectable cybernetic or biological enhancements. The research team considered this specimen ideal for study and celebrated what they believed was their first clean acquisition. They noted mild anomalies in the initial neural scans, but dismissed them as residual effects of the capture process, confident their systems could handle any potential risk. The containment chamber represented the absolute peak of galactic engineering. Constructed with layered energy fields, molecular sensors, and redundant safety systems, it had never experienced a breach across 15,000 years of operation. They had successfully contained everything from energy-based life forms to crystalline entities with tectonic-level strength. Lead scientist Vorlak declared the human would be fully cataloged within 7 standard cycles. Their confidence came from institutional arrogance. 15 millennia of scientific dominance created a culture that viewed their own protocols as infallible. Every safety measure was labeled permanent and foolproof. The research team monitored standard vital signs while completely missing the subtle patterns emerging in the background data streams. They were watching the surface while the real activity happened beneath. The first indication came from the neuromonitor. A rhythmic pulse pattern began emerging in the subject's deep brain activity, inconsistent with any known state of unconsciousness or sedation. It wasn't the erratic spike they'd expect from a waking subject, but something far more controlled. The pattern resembled coordinated neural firing, almost like a countdown sequence. Junior researcher Tassar noted the anomaly and flagged it for review. The senior staff dismissed it as instrument error. They were too focused on the primary biometric readings, which remained perfectly within expected parameters. Heart rate steady at 58 beats per minute. Respiration normal. Brain activity in the conscious ranges remained flat. The containment field itself showed the first physical sign of interference. A barely detectable fluctuation in the containment field's harmonic frequency. The system's automatic correction mechanisms engaged, but the fluctuation repeated exactly 3.7 seconds later. Then again at precisely the same interval. It wasn't random interference. It was a pattern. Security systems designed to detect escape attempts remained silent. Their parameters were set for physical force, energy weapons, or biological manipulation. They had no protocols for whatever was happening now. The specimen hadn't moved, yet the containment field's integrity was slowly degrading. Then the neural activity shifted. The rhythmic pulses synchronized across 4 different brain regions that shouldn't be able to coordinate while sedated. The pattern intensified, building toward something the monitoring equipment couldn't classify. The lead scientist finally noticed the anomaly spreading across multiple systems simultaneously. His celebration turned to concern as he realized they weren't watching a specimen waking up. They were watching something executing a predetermined sequence. Vega's eyes opened without the faintest trace of confusion or disorientation. There was no groggy blink against the harsh light, no sluggish turn of the head. His gaze was immediate and analytical, sweeping the containment chamber with the practiced efficiency of a field operative assessing hostile territory. His first sensory input wasn't visual. It was a swift, internalized scan of the ambient energy signatures in the room, identifying the specific frequencies of the containment field, life support systems, and monitoring equipment. He categorized each emission source by type and potential threat level in under a second. He rose from the examination platform. His body transitioned from a state of complete stillness to an operational ready stance in precisely 2.3 seconds. It wasn't a sudden jerk of movement, but a fluid, economical shift of weight and muscle that placed him in the optimal position to react. His center of gravity lowered, his shoulders squared, his hands remaining relaxed at his sides. Every line of his body communicated controlled potential energy. In the observation booth, the research team's monitors showed a startling contradiction. His heart rate held steady at exactly 60 beats per minute. His respiration remained deep and even. The biosigns that should have been spiking with panic or aggression were instead locked into a state of absolute calm. It was the physiological profile of someone in a controlled meditative state, not a panicked captive. Junior researcher Tissar highlighted the readings, his own pulse quickening as he documented the impossibility. The subject's galvanic skin response showed no fluctuation. His core temperature hadn't deviated by 1/10 of a degree. Vega's eyes continued their methodical scan. They tracked across the reinforced viewport of the observation deck, noting the number of researchers present. His gaze paused for a fraction of a second on the primary environmental control conduit running along the ceiling, then on the subtle seams in the wall that indicated the placement of internal security emplacements. He was mentally mapping the room's infrastructure and defensive layout without any apparent external tools. The lead scientist recovered from his shock and activated the intercom. Specimen remained calm. You are in a secure research facility. He spoke in crisp galactic standard, expecting the complex syntax and alien phonetics to be incomprehensible to a newly contacted species. Vega's head turned. His eyes focused directly on the speaker grill. When he spoke, his voice was a low, calm baritone, devoid of any strain or hesitation. The language that came from him was not some rough approximation or pidgin dialect. It was flawless, accentless galactic standard, pronounced with the formal precision of a diplomatic envoy. Your assessment of the situation is incorrect. The silence in the observation booth was absolute. The translation systems, primed to analyze thousands of potential primitive languages, remained inert. They weren't needed. The researchers stared, trying to process a first contact scenario that had just shattered every established protocol. This wasn't a frightened animal or a curious primitive. This was something else entirely. He took a single step toward the energy barrier, his movement deliberate and unnervingly quiet. He looked through the viewport, his gaze locking not on the senior scientists but on the junior assistant who had been diligently recording the anomalies. Tessar froze under the direct attention. Vega's expression remained neutral, but his next words carried a weight that changed everything in the room. His voice was perfectly level, a simple statement of fact that felt like a declaration of war. You grabbed the wrong human. The containment field should have repelled organic matter at the atomic level. Its fundamental design created an impassable barrier by manipulating subatomic particles to maintain a fixed repulsive frequency. Every known biological structure would encounter absolute resistance, unable to approach closer than 3 centimeters from the field's visible boundary. It was physics, not engineering, a law of nature the GSA had weaponized into perfect confinement. Vega stood motionless before the shimmering energy wall. He made no aggressive move, no attempt to test its strength. His calm was more unnerving than any physical challenge would have been. The research team watched, expecting the field to hold as it always had. Their confidence was built on 15,000 years of unchallenged operational success. Then the field began to change. Instead of maintaining its steady hum and consistent visual frequency, the energy barrier developed a liquid quality. Ripples moved across its surface like disturbances on water. The light bent and warped in patterns that defied the containment system's design parameters. Alerts flashed on the monitoring stations, each one indicating a different type of system failure. Diagnostic feeds showed the field's molecular cohesion breaking down at the quantum level. Atomic bonds that should have been unbreakable were weakening without any apparent cause. The system attempted to compensate, cycling through its 1,000 preset frequency variations. Each new frequency held for only milliseconds before suffering the same degradation. Something was systematically dismantling the field's structural integrity from within. GSA technology operated on fixed frequency principles, a cornerstone of galactic engineering for millennia. Their systems used established energy patterns that could be calibrated and refined, but never fundamentally altered. The containment field represented their most advanced application of this principle, a perfect, unchanging defensive barrier.